Hey, good morning. Happy Monday morning, everybody. Welcome to the Masculine Minute. I am your solo host today, Matthew Ace Haggerty. This week, Joshua, the Ultimate Warrior Gillo, is actually on a Boy Scouts trip with his youngest son, and they are having a blast in the outdoors, roughing it, and teaching those young men how to become men. And I'm very excited for him, but I'm also very excited to be here with you today and this entire week. We'll see what happens this week. As I'm going solo, I might be having some special guests on at some point, but we will see. So, with that said, today I am going to be talking about men's emotional health. It's something that I feel like it's overlooked. I feel like as men, we are told not to have emotion, and when we go through life without being able to properly get out that emotion and express ourselves, it could find ourselves using things like drugs, alcohol, pornography, aggression, you name it. All these things that people typically associate with masculinity that isn't showing up how it should. So I think it's important just to talk about this a little bit. I'm going to start with a story of when I was a child because I can really mostly speak from personal experience, what I've experienced growing up as a man, uh, boy to man, and what I've gone through and at times struggled with emotionally in my life. So I was a typical suburban kid, grew up in the suburbs of Fremont, California, and two amazing parents. They worked their butts off. They were both blue collar workers and they provided very well. They showed my brother and I a very strong work ethic. However, when it came to being raised by my father, he was the most loving man, one of the most loving men that I have ever come across. However, at the same time, which I did not realize at the time, I was just a child. And what we experience as a child is just what we experience. That's our reality. So we don't know any different usually. So being raised by my parents, my father specifically, he at one point hurt his back in he worked at a printing press, and somehow some way he had hurt his back. I guess he had this degenerative thing in his spine. A couple discs slipped while he was trying to carry something pretty heavy, I'm assuming. And so he threw out his back, essentially. Well, worse than that, the disc actually slipped out of his spine. And so he had to go be rushed in for emergency surgery. And this was when I was pretty young. I was probably like 4, 5, 6 years ago, or 6 years old. And I don't remember much about the surgery. I don't remember much about the recovery, but I know he was out for probably over a year or so, and he couldn't go back to the printing press. Whatever kind of surgery they did to his back, one, he had to recover, and two, he wasn't able to go back to the same job. So, with that said, what they gave him at the time was Percocet, and that was to deal with the pain. And I always remember growing up that my dad would complain about his back pain. That was kind of his chronic thing that he would always talk about. I can't do that because of my back. I can't do this because of my back. But what I didn't realize at the same time is that even after his back had healed and he got back to work doing something else, he continued to use Percocet. Now, I bring that up because anyone that knows about Percocet or any of those kinds of drugs, what they do is they numb you. So your lows aren't as low, your highs aren't as high. And I tell you this story because I was essentially growing up with a father who was not emotionally there. Now, I know a lot of men listening to this can relate to having a father that didn't show emotion, having a father who worked hard, provided for the family, did all the things that we as men are supposed to do. However, they weren't emotionally available. My father had become not emotionally available because of drugs, prescription medicine. I know other fathers, especially in certain cultures and types of family, especially where there's a lot of hard workers and things like that, are not emotionally involved. And so as a young man, I was taught by his actions, not his words, but by his actions, to hold my emotions in, to not be emotional, to not display any sort of emotion. Even with my friends, we would play, we would hurt ourselves. And if we cried or anything like that, then we would be shamed or shunned as not being a strong man, not being a strong male. And I'm being polite on the language here with what my friends and I would talk about. And so it's interesting how growing up from my father, growing up with our friends and our friends' fathers, and growing up in society in general as well, is we as men are taught to essentially keep our emotions in. I like to call it emotional suppression. We are discouraged from openly expressing our emotions, and this kind of suppression and it really can add a lot of difficulties, especially when forming or maintaining intimate relationships. We don't have we have a very limited emotional support system. I would say my mother was my emotional support system, and that was great and all, but at the same time too, she was struggling with her addictions. And so when it came to like her addictions, I couldn't open up to her emotionally about it because she would get defensive and frustrated, and she was fighting her own demons. So even the woman that I would open up to, there were times that I could not be emotionally available to her. So what would that do for me personally? Well, it's made it very difficult for me, and this is something I'm working on, to deal with intimate relationships. I do one of two things usually when I would get frustrated in a relationship. Either I would lash out and I'd get angry, and anger was a go-to emotion for me, or I would suppress all my emotion and I'd get very silent and quiet. And I would just look away. I wouldn't say anything and I would just stare at something and really just shut down. And that's usually the two ways that men that don't know how to deal with their emotions act. We either go 0 to 100 and get super angry or frustrated or upset, or we get very quiet and docile. Now, if you are somebody that is going through this, somebody who is dealing with not being able to express your emotions, there's a few things that you can do. And I've been learning about this as I get older, as I work through this. And one of the things is essentially getting an emotional support system around you. Now, I don't want you to go to your spouse, your wife, your girlfriend, or whatever, and become this emotional river for her, just going buck wild, like the dam had broken and all this emotion is getting thrown on her. She wants you to be emotional with her. That is for darn sure. However, she doesn't want you to be another girlfriend. She does not want that out of you. So there's a balancing act with your spouse. Obviously, be open and honest, express your emotions, but don't go to her like you're another girlfriend of hers. What you need are other men around you. And guess what? Not all your friends, all your guy friends are going to want to open up. They're dealing with the same issues that you and I are dealing with. However, once you start opening up and being vulnerable to your guy friends, you will realize and start to see the friends of yours that are willing to open up themselves. You might already know one or two of your friends that are willing to open up emotionally, but having a strong male emotional relationship is so important. Joshua's out right now, but he is one of the guys that I go to when I need to open up about my emotions, about what I'm feeling, what I'm going through, because he's going to listen, he's going to understand, and as we men love to do, we love to fix things. He is not going to fix it. He is going to do what any good friend does, is he just listens. Obviously, he's going to give his suggestions, and I ask for his suggestions as well. However, having a strong male emotional support system is so important because these emotions have to get out. If they don't get out, they're going to come out in one way or another. They always do. A lot of times for us, it's alcohol. It could be sports, watching television, getting frustrated that our sports team is losing, or rooting them on as they're winning. Emotion has to come out in one way or another. Any sort of emotion we have gets stuck in our body, and that energy gets stuck in our body, and we've got to release it certain ways. Now, another great way to get emotion out is, like I said, not watching sports, but playing sports, or a martial art is a great way to get that out. A lot of men also go and get it out at the gym. No matter what you do, whether it's a sport, a gym, a martial art, the key to that, though, is also to have other men involved, other men around. And where I find myself falling short with that is I go to the gym a lot, but I work out by myself. I don't have a workout partner or anything like that. So, but I do have someone like Joshua who I can open up to emotionally. So, find yourself an emotional support group, and also find yourself an activity. Martial arts are great because you not only get that emotion out physically through the martial art, but now you have a camaraderie of other men around you. And martial arts are great at talking and teaching more than just the martial art itself. There's a whole code of conduct and how a man is supposed to present himself and carry himself through the martial art, through the sport, the act of physical combat with one another. And that is a fantastic way. Also, like I said earlier, being able to just openly communicate. If you can communicate to your friend how you feel and everything with that, then when your spouse comes to you, one, you figure out how you can finally start listening to her and understanding her and not trying to just fix her. But also at the same time understand that you are not your spouse's girlfriend as well. I found myself in that situation before as well, where now I'm the one taking on all the emotion of my significant other. So there is a fine line when it comes to your spouse, your girlfriend, what have you. But I would say just take those simple first steps of being able to get those emotions out somehow, some way, because they're going to find their way out no matter what. And so do it a good, constructive way. And you're going to find yourself calmer. You're going to find yourself being able to understand how you feel. Like, one of the things that I love is meditation. I'm going to get into meditation here just real quick. The thing about that I love about meditation is you get to sit with yourself. You get to be with yourself. Nobody's around you. Your eyes are closed, and you are letting whatever's going inside of you happen. And for me, that has been a game changer when figuring out what kind of emotional state I'm in the moment, but also what kind of emotional state I am in general. There are so many things that I've been able to find out about myself and become aware of. And the great thing about being aware of something is once you're aware of it, now you have the power to change it. So much, so often, we as men give our power away. And the easiest way to do that is by bad emotion, shutting down or going freaking nuts, drinking alcohol, using pornography, violence. All of those things don't give us power. They take away our power. And something like meditation, being aware of your emotions. And the great thing about meditation is you don't judge. It's not a judgment. If you feel anger, feel that fucking anger. And I'm sorry I'm cussing because I told myself I would say the F word, and now I already did. Feel that anger, feel that frustration, feel all those emotions. They're stored up inside of you. They need to come out. And once you start recognizing those emotions and forming a relationship with them, your life is going to forever change. So, for you emotional suppressed men out there, which I know there's a ton of us, find men, whether it's personal relationships, sports relationships, martial arts relationships, meditate. All of these things are so simple. And if you need to talk more about this, reach out to me, shoot me a DM, email me, ace@superherobydesign.com. I would love to just listen. That's all. Just listen, because we're all in this together. And the stronger we can make each other, the more we can put ourselves around each other and build each other up, the better we're going to be for our community, for our spouses, for our family, and for society. And that's all this show is about. I am so blessed to be here to talk to you. And I'm so happy for Joshua being able to spend some quality time, not only with his son, but other young men out in the wilderness, teaching them how to properly be men. And guess what? They're going to have emotional conversations. I bet a lot of these kids have never even opened up emotionally before. And he's going to push them to do that, because that is what makes a man masculine. So I appreciate the time. Running up against it. Solo mission number 1 done. I will be back tomorrow. I love you all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending part of your morning with me. With that said,